everybody. Welcome back to Identifying God's Best, our channel on biblical dating. How can we get to know one another? How can we honor God while we do it? And how can we make good choices as we strive to find a spouse? We got our usuals here. Hey, Bruce.
Hello.
Hey, Hannah.
Hey.
And of course, you got me. I'm Steven, your host, as usual. We're going to be covering a fun question today on the channel, and that's it's one we hear a lot, actually, which is, how do you know if you're ready to start dating? How can you tell when it's the right time, when you're the right person? And so this will be fun. I think it'll be useful to everybody. But as usual, we're going to be starting with an icebreaker question. We like to make each other uncomfortable, dig up the past history, get to know each other better, and that way you guys can get to know us. Today's fun. First crush, guys. When? Why? Discuss. Who wants to go first?
I'll do the honor. So my first crush was back in, I believe, to be when I was in kindergarten. The girl that I had a crush on. Why? So this is getting into the deep, dark secret of why. I thought she was really kind, and she always had a smile on her face. And that, to me, was like super attractive. She was constantly smiling. So little old Bruce, or little young Bruce, had a crush on her. And on one particular incident, we were lined up waiting to enter into the classroom. I went for it. I grabbed her hand.
Dude, 6-year-old Bruce got the moves.
That was less than 6. That's like when I was 4.
Oh man.
So, yep. So we held hands for like 3 seconds.
Nice. Hannah, how about you?
I think it must have been about the same age, 5-ish, 5, 6. Yeah, Sunday school, playground. Why? I don't know. He was cute and shy and kind of like had like the pigeon-toed, like looking at his feet type of vibe, and he dressed really cutely. He dressed really cutely, like very like buttoned down with like little vests, like the sweater vests, and I would throw rocks at the other boys that picked on him, protected him. He was a cute little guy.
Well, now we know your type. For me, also kindergarten. I feel like that's kind of early, but maybe not, given that we're all around the same time. For me, it was also kindergarten. There was a girl in my class. I thought she was pretty and she was nice. The one thing I remember is that I came home crying one day, and my mom was asking why, and it's because my parents, both their names start with the same letter. And so I told my parents, like, I'm so sad. I like this girl, but we can't get married because her name starts with a J and my name starts with an S, and so it can never be. I proposed to her with a little ring that I got from a goodie bag at the dentist, and she said yes. So anyway, past history.
You still talk to her? That's a momentous occasion.
Oh, no. I don't know where she is.
I think I still see mine every once in a while.
Oh, wow.
Like, yeah, every once in a while. But yeah.
Fun times. On that note, let's dig in. That's obviously not when we're ready to start dating. So how do you know when you're ready, or if you're ready to start dating? Like, is it a time thing? Is it a life situation thing? What do you guys think is a good biblical way, a good God-honoring way to think about how we should start dating?
I'll go ahead and start. So I don't think it's necessarily a time thing, to an extent, reasonably so. I think it's mostly a maturity thing. It's a character thing. In fact, that's something that we've been hitting on over and over again, pretty much episode after episode, hitting on character, because that's truly what the Lord values and sees as beautiful and attractive. And so should whoever it is that you are desiring to pursue or to have a relationship with. That should also be the captivating factor that determines whether or not you're ready to date. So I think when we talk about character and maturity, just know that character doesn't come just, overnight. Character comes through discipline. So I think the main point that I want to hit on for this particular question, how do I know when I'm ready to date, or how do you know? It would be whether or not you're disciplined as an individual, whether you're a man or a woman. And specifically, we're talking about spiritual disciplines. Are you really spending time in the Word that is profitable and that is sincere and genuine, and not just, seeing it as a chore, as a checklist? Same thing when it comes to communing with the Lord in prayer. Are you growing in your dependence on Him such that you are having a very vibrant prayer, that you are able to see actively how God is working actively in your life? and how he has blessed you pretty much every single day, and that you're thankful and that you're dependent and obedient to him every step of the way. Maturity also comes through fellowshipping and exercising your spiritual gift within the church and serving the local body as well. Is that also a continual habit and discipline of yours to not neglect the meeting with fellow saints and really seeking to build and pour into other people's lives so that they can come out more Christ-like? So, I mean, there's just a lot of spiritual disciplines, basics to that of a Christian. So I think if you are still a new believer, that you've only known the Lord for a short few months and there's still a lot that you don't know, my encouragement is what an exciting and neat opportunity the Lord has given to you, not just to save you from your sins, but now to give you this precious time to grow and treasure this time. Don't see it as, oh, I'm still single, but utilize that time to grow mighty in spirit, to be effective for him, and wait patiently on the Lord while you work on the character. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean like you got to be like Jesus before you get married. None of us here are Jesus, and you know, that's not what we're talking about when we're thinking through maturity. But you should be able to see a pattern of growth, of consistency, and not just, giving into fleeting sins and temptations and pleasures. Your faith in the Lord should be solid, should be dependable, whether you're a man or a woman. So that's the maturity aspect of it from a spiritual discipline standpoint. I do think a factor comes in for physical discipline. You got to take care of yourself well. You can't be a baby in the house coddled by your parents and think like, oh, I'm going to date this wonderful, girl who's going to be my mom to be in the future. So don't do that either. So that's just a quick hint on that. Don't be a baby, especially for the men, baby by your mom, but really be a man that is reliable and dependable, and that is extremely attractive to the women. So if you got all that down and you're growing in the Lord and people can testify that, not just with it for yourself, but other men in your life, godly men can testify that you're growing, then I think you're ready to date.
Hannah, what do you think?
Ooh, exciting. Yeah, I would say, if you're trying to figure out if you're ready to date, start dating. And I kind of mean that jokingly because, you shouldn't start dating in the sandbox or, we have our fun stories, but they're just stories. I think you should be a functional adult, be ready to reasonably get married soon, and just like generally responsible. Yeah, like Bruce said, taking care of yourself, just making your own life decisions, having a faith that's definitely your own and not your parents or, kind of like your friend groups, but definitely having like a personal relationship with the Lord where there's growth and you're excelling. But yeah, no one's perfect. And I think that a lot of people get stuck in this like, oh, I have to reach a certain level of, sanctification before I can start dating. You might never start dating, I guess is my fear. I would encourage you to, even just if you really are convicted, like now is not the time, set a time for yourself. Like, okay, 6 months from now, I really want to start dating. So what do I have to do in the next 6 months? And just kind of make it a tangible thing, because, it's so much fun to talk about like the principles of dating and kind of like hypotheticals of dating, but there's something tangible that happens when you start dating, or that you're about to start dating. You really start to take things seriously, and hopefully you are already taking things seriously for the Lord, and this is just a little bit added of a bonus push for you to just be a godly adult and really value the things that God values, which ultimately is marriage and bringing glory to God, and hopefully in a relationship that you pursue, that ultimately God's the one that's glorified.
Thanks. And I like how you guys both kind of strike at two sides of the coin and two sides of the issue. And that on one hand, you should be growing in godliness, you should be growing in maturity, you should be growing in discipline. But then on the other hand, like if that's happening, to not be hesitant and to be ready and to be excited. So I think that's fun. So that's one side of things. Suppose you're ready to date. How do you find out if the other person is ready to date? How do you know if the person you're interested in is ready, is growing in those things, I guess?
Yeah, I think that's a really neat question to consider. I think a lot of people just kind of get into it because it's like, oh, I really like them, so I'm going to start dating. And if you are kind of asking yourself like, well, are they ready to start dating? Hopefully considering the other person. And it's really neat. Philippians 2:3-4, it says, do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility, consider one another as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look for your own personal interests, but also for the interest of others. And unfortunately, dating can be fueled by a lot of selfish ambition. And to consider if the other person is ready is a good question to ask yourself before you go out with them or you ask them out. But whatever the case may be, if you decide yes or no, keep putting whoever the potential significant other person is above yourself. Even if you kind of have told a couple friends like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about this girl, or hey, I'm thinking about this guy, and then you kind of find out something about him that you're like, oh, maybe he's not ready. You don't have to go tell your friends that. You don't have to slander him or anything like that. You're growing, you're learning, he's growing, he's learning, hopefully. And if not, maybe you can tell a leader or someone who's in your church over him, like, hey, this is some things I noticed, but he's a really neat guy. It would be really cool if he could get encouraged to grow in this area, and just leave it at that. But ultimately too, it is the other person's decision whether or not they're ready to start dating. I think that sometimes I've heard of situations where someone's like, oh, I'm not really ready to start dating right now, and it turns into this debate session. Well, I really think you are ready for dating, and let it be the other person's call. I will say though, dating is tough, and sometimes something comes up, at least something I like to call the switch, which is, sometimes girls date and they just, well, yeah, I'll pick on girls right now. Girls date and it's just a train wreck, and you're like, oh man, should this person even really be dating? It just seems like they're making all the wrong choices. They're, have the worst attitudes in the relationships and stuff. And then sometimes they go out with the right guy and the switch flips. And maybe it's just that God's best is identified, and they're like, okay, this is real. This is my future husband, and now I get submission. I'm, excited to do things God's way, and it's like the stars seem to align. Not to say that not every, relationships have their issues. Everyone has to work through strengths and weaknesses, but you might have seen this girl who just told you, no, she's not ready, or, you've established she's not ready, and then she goes out with someone. You're like, why didn't that happen with me? Well, it's because you're still looking for God's best, which is fine, because you can subscribe to our channel and we will bring you more content on how to do that. But yeah, hopefully in the relationship that you do start, once you start one, you can really work together to maximize each other's fruit and your service to the Lord. And that's really a key sign that you both are ready to move forward, potentially even.
I think to add on to what Hannah is talking about, it comes back down to character. How do you know if the other person is ready to date? Examine closely their character. But I think with that though, it requires a lot of wisdom and humility, especially if you are someone who's interested in pursuing someone and dating someone. In many cases, a lot of the times I think, especially I speak to the men, you might have this misconstrued idea of oh, she's this goddess, she's super godly, she's 10 out of 10 in all areas, in humility and submission and service and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All you've ever noticed about her now, since you have a crush on her or you're interested in pursuing her, everything that she does, it's wow, this is how Jesus lived. But that's kind of the point though. We have this false reality that we've built up on ourselves, on someone that we're really interested in pursuing. So we falsely convince ourselves into thinking oh, she's ready, I'm ready, and she's definitely ready, so I'm gonna go for it. So with that, so yes, it's still grounded in character. I think there's a great deal of wisdom and humility is required on your end to make sure you're seeing reality clearly, and that you're not just being swooned by your own emotions. So I think with that, then to add on to character, how do you assess character of someone else? Obviously, you should pay close attention on how they're serving, how they are in public and in private. All those things take into consideration. But I think much more than that is just seek godly counsel. If the both of you are active within the church, you should have plenty of good, strong biblical friendships. People who genuinely seek out for the best interests of the both of you. And there is nothing wrong with going up to other more mature, godly, wise individuals within the church and just ask them hey, do you think this so-and-so is ready to date? And just listen closely to what they're talking about. A lot of men like to do this. They see dating as me against the world. So they shut everyone out and they refuse to share any important information with anyone, period, just because, they feel oh, it is my ownership and my leadership to take care of it well. They close off unnecessarily so. So I think that would be the caution against a lot of the men when it comes to deciding whether or not the girl you want to pursue is ready to date. Seek godly counsel, find other sisters that are close to her, other men, leaders within the church who see her serving actively, and just see where she's at. But don't do it in like an investigative mode, like you're just trying to dig into every single detail of her life. But I trust that the leaders will have the wisdom to not do that and engage in that type of discussion anyways. So open yourselves up to godly counsel and just listen to what godly people have to say in your life. Definitely the Lord is using the godly individuals within your church to direct you, to guide you, and to even support you and to help you out in your growth. And that growth includes, for many of us, marriage down the line. So that's exciting. God has placed the people around us in our lives to actually be successful and to help us in the process of identifying His best for us.
Thanks so much, guys. I feel like both of these questions, they can be very complex and difficult, but I think you guys did a good job of really distilling down to what's important. And what's important is character. How do we stand before God? How is our growth in our personal holiness? How is their growth in their personal holiness? And how can these things come together in a dating relationship so we can please the Lord? Well, this has been really fun. I hope that this answered a lot of questions for our viewers. If you guys have other questions in the future, do continue to watch. We hope that we can continue to be helpful to you. This has been Identifying God's Best. We will see you guys next time.